Hello and welcome to our review of the Dragon Momoko Master Grade 1 to 100 scale Gundam Astray Blue Frame 3rd. So as shown off in the manual, this is a 2-in-1 kit. You're going to be able to either make the Blue Frame 3rd or the Blue Frame 2nd L. So right out of the box, we're going to get the Blue Frame 3rd, 2 arm blades, 2 beam rifles, 2 beam blades for the knees, 2 attachment points to attach the beam sabers, 4 additional sets of hands, 2 red beam sabers, 2 clear red effect parts for the knee beam blades, 2 armor schneiders, and weirdly enough, an alternative head. In terms of the conversion parts to the 2nd L, you're going to be getting the shoulders, the backpack attachment point, the tactical arms, the beam effect parts for the tactical arms arm blades mode, some conversion parts for the feet, as well as ammo packs for the Gatling gun, the 2nd L head, the 2nd L shins, as well as the 2nd L back skirt. You'll also be getting a clear base, as well as many of these clear rods to help show off its tactical arms. And last but not least, you'll be getting a set of Waterslide Decals for the Blue Frame 3rd, a set of water slides for the 2nd L, and a set of foil stickers for the 2nd L and the 3rd respectively. So this is a massive amount of plastic, so I'll be reviewing this in 2 parts. This part will focus just on the Blue Frame 3rd. So in terms of articulation, the head is pretty mobile. It can look up and down a pretty good amount. It can rotate off side to side a very good amount. And there isn't any fancy neck mechanism to make it do chicken necks or anything like that. It's just going to be a single ball joint. So onto the torso, it is the exact same mold as the Bandai version, but unfortunately it doesn't have the same range of mobility. You're going to be able to wiggle it up and down as well as side to side ever so slightly, but I think because the fitting is a lot worse, mechanisms inside the torso doesn't allow it to move as much as the Bandai version. All the movement basically comes from this one ball joint. You're also not going to be able to get too much of a rotation just because the front crotch piece bumps into the way. So in terms of the arm movement, you're going to be able to rotate it a solid 360 degrees. The bend is not quite going to be 180, but still pretty satisfactory. And since this is a carbon copy of the Bandai version, you're going to have a bit of wrist movement up and down. So in terms of the shoulders, you're going to be able to lift them up quite a ways. This piece is also on a rotating mechanism, though these individual yellow parts do tend to fall off. It's pretty annoying, to be honest. But in terms of actual movement, you're going to be able to rotate the shoulder over a pretty decent amount and slide it up and down a pretty decent amount as well. But again, this is just all borrowed from the original Bandai Astray frame. So in terms of the waist rotation, the front skirts are going to be able to wiggle around just a tiny bit, but really not too much. The side skirts are on this sliding mechanism, so you'll be able to slide up and down ever so slightly. Same for the back, you're going to be able to slide it up and down ever so slightly. But now onto the legs, where you're going to be able to kick it up, not quite for 180, but still pretty good. And to the back, also not quite 180, but still pretty good. Off to the side, you're really not going to be able to get much just because the thigh here is absolutely massive and it constantly bumps into the side skirt. Now, since most of the mechanisms in here is identical to the Bandai version, the leg is going to have the same great bend that you'd expect from a Master Grade Astray. Now, in terms of the feet, the ankle is going to have a decent range of movement, though there is a lot of armor constantly bumping into the way. So here's a look at the alternative head that comes for the Blue Frame 3rd. I have to say I really don't like this design, partially because the Dragon Momoko sculpt is pretty bad, and partially because the head is just so long for some reason. Now the kit only comes with 2 polycaps that fits the head, and you're going to get 3 heads total, 2 for the Blue Frame 3rd and 1 for the 2nd L. So I decided to give my 2 polycaps to the primary 3rd head as well as the 2nd L head. So in terms of accessories, I wanted to talk about these emotion manipulators, and I have to say they are absolutely terrible. While they may look pretty good because of the colors, the molding quality of Dragon Momoko is simply not there. These are super flimsy, they break super easily, In fact, for one of the hands, the thumb just snapped off the runner without even me touching it. It just came broken, which is very unfortunate since I think these do look a lot better than the all blue fixed hands, but the technology isn't there. Plus, these are way too big for the scale of the blue frame. So you will be getting 2 of these beam rifles. There's really nothing too spectacular. There's a pretty nice color apps, but no moving parts or anything fancy like that. These handles don't swing around whatsoever. You do, however, get an alternative scope, which I found to be pretty interesting. You're able to detach this part and give it a much smaller scope. And as you can see, here's a larger scope compared to the smaller scope. I have to say, I do prefer the larger one. Now, as another gimmick, you are able to pull off the back of these beam rifles and attach on a new attachment point. And when you do that, you're able to turn the handle of the beam rifle into a beam saber. So here are the arm blades, and I have to say that it looks pretty cool. It's going to be on a rotating mechanism, so you'll be able to rotate it 360 degrees, no problem. Over here is going to be an attachment to attach it onto the back of the arms, and on the back there's going to be a cool little booster vent thing. So overall it's pretty simplistic, but I have to say it's probably my favorite weapon on the Blue Frame 3rd. So for the knees, you're going to be getting this massive knee beam blade, and you're going to be able to open up the top and insert an effect part. It can take a bit of fiddling to get everything lined up, but this is the end result with the effect part. And lastly, you are going to get 2 of these tiny armor schneiders. They don't fold out or anything like the strikes and impulses. So attaching the knee armor is pretty simple. There's going to be a tab here that you're going to want to attach to under the new shins. It's going to fit in very nicely here. And there's 2 hooks here that will slot into these grooves on the calves. It's a bit of a tight connection, but once you get it in, it snaps in nicely, and it's a pretty solid connection. The back skirt has an attachment point, and you're going to anchor it on to the rifle. Very solid connection. It's also kind of interesting to note that the manual does tell you you can slide on this Gatling ammo pack onto the tail of the Blue Frame 3rd. And attaching the arm blade is also pretty simple. Just going to plug it in to the attachment point on the back of the arms. And the armor schneider is going to slide in very easily to the attachment point on the thigh. So here's the Blue Frame 3rd with all of its weapons attached. And while I do have to say it does make me like the kit look a little bit more, it still doesn't really sell me on it. I don't really like how the huge knees cover up the majority of the Astray legs, which is arguably one of my favorite parts of the Astray design. But other than that, I do really like the look of the arm blades as well as the rifles attached to the back. It helps give it more of a wing-esque silhouette while still keeping it pretty grounded. So just getting it into this basic standing action pose is pretty time consuming and troublesome. This kit really doesn't fit well, mainly in the leg area where the attachment point from the leg to the waist is absolutely laughable. It will fall off basically every other time you try to pose it. Similarly, small pieces like parts of the chest and the shoulder will also fall off. The entire arm is also prone to just falling straight off. So overall, posing this is going to be a real test of patience, and it definitely doesn't show off what the Bandai Astray frame is capable of. And to make things a bit less troublesome, you are given the action base and an action voice attachment point that slots in pretty snugly. So while the included base doesn't fix the problem of pieces falling off, it does mean you have to play with the legs a bit less to get it into a satisfactory pose. Given the weak connection of the leg to the waist, it's already kind of... Given the weak connection from the waist to the legs, it's probably not a good idea to add more weight onto the legs, but you can actually pull off a not half bad kicking pose with the blades emitted. It has no problem wielding the beam rifle or the beam saber, but again, posing it even in the air is very troublesome. Though I do have to say, still, my favorite part of the kit is definitely the backpack and the way those little flaps open up to expose the vents. So now for some of my thoughts on the Dragon Momoko Blue Frame Astray 3rd, and this is specifically for the 3rd configuration. So in terms of pros, I really like the new additions to it over the just regular blue frame. I think that the weapons all look very good. They have a good amount of details and color apps to make them look pretty impressive. And I mentioned this before, but I really like the backpack. The way the flaps open up to expose the wings is pretty impressive in my opinion. There's also just the sheer amount of plastic you're getting. You're getting a lot of effect parts, a lot of weapons, plus you're getting all the stuff for the 2nd L, which you could probably have the 3rd variation wielding the tactical arms and still make it look pretty cool. But that's pretty much it in terms of pros. It's got a lot of content and it can look kind of cool with the new weapons. But the cons are plenty and they're pretty significant. So first things first, this is a pretty terrible fitting kit. Building it isn't very fun because it's just the Bandai Master Grade Blue Frame, but worse. Worse, things don't slide around as smoothly, things don't fit as smoothly, parts tend to fall off, stuff like that. So just being a copy of Bandai is definitely a mark off in my book. And something that's also pretty significant is that it's really just not fun to pose because, as I mentioned before, parts just keep falling off. You'll be putting on one thing, another thing falls off. You put that thing back on, another thing falls off, and it's like a wild goose chase of just trying to get your kit put together. The action base does help a little with that by making sure that you don't need to, angle and pose the feet perfectly to stand still, but it really doesn't solve the issue. It just kind of makes sure that you don't need to pose the legs accurately. And I have to say, the fact that the legs don't have a good connection to the waist is pretty much a deal breaker in my book because the legs are a pretty dynamic component, and especially with the giant knee armor, it really just hinders the posability of the kit. So I think that this Dragon Momoko kit is pretty much only for extreme fans of the Blue Frame 3rd. If you're just a casual Astray Blue Frame fan and you're looking into a kit, I think that unless you really favor the 3rd configuration, I'd say go for the other retail Bandai kits, which I think is the 2nd Revise and the Astray D with all the Dragoons and the Striker backpack. Those are definitely a much more fun build. The fitting is a lot better, and it can actually show off the full posability of the Astray frame. So yeah, thank you for watching my review of the Dragon Momoko Blue Frame Astray 3rd. In the next part, we'll be going over the conversion parts for the 2nd L and checking out the posability on that. So thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time in the next part.